Greetings everyone, welcome to ChessAdvancedd. This game was played in FIDE World Cup in the second round, and with the black pieces we have Hans Niemann, one of the top seeds of the tournaments, and he's facing off against Lorenzo Lodici. And the thing is that he has to survive now with the black pieces, because the difference between their rating is roughly, well, let's just say roughly 80 points. But other than that, the first game was drawn. Hans had some chances with the white pieces, but he was not able to convert. Now with the black pieces, he's going to have to suffer and maybe hold Lodici for a draw. Here with the white piece, Lodici goes for e4. We have e5, knight to f3, and just knight to c6, bishop to b5. He goes for the roll Lopez, a6, Morphy's defense, bishop to a4, and just knight to f6. And we have castles, bishop to e7, and here just bishop caps on c6. So basically, this is the delayed exchange variation. This is the Morphy's defense. D captures, rook to e1, and just knight to d7. And now even going for c3, preparing the central thrust with d4, and we have c5, but immediately d4. Doesn't matter that you are preparing this c5 to try and just control the center, but unfortunately that you cannot in this position, and d4 was pushed, and now more trades are going to occur. But more trades the better, because Hans would be happy that he gets a draw with the white pieces. Don't matter the tie breaks, because he can just go towards the tie breaks with the white pieces and he can try to win that. Here e captures, and now just comes c captures, and just castles was played in this position. Although you could go for the c captures, but after knight caps on d4, you play knight to e5, bishop to f4, attacking the knight, bishop to f6, and after this knight to c3, you just play bishop to g4. Just develop the queen with develop the bishop with tempo, attacking towards the queen. And here knight d to e2, blocking, also asking for a trade. Although you could castle in this position, but knight to d3 is a much beautiful move, and looks very amazing. Here just attacking that, and after this bishop caps on c7, just deflecting the queen so that you can just pick this up. But just queen to d7, you won't trade. And after rook to f1, moving this away, you just play this knight caps on b2. Most likely a trade would occur, and after this king captures, yes, you have to go for the king captures. You cannot go for bishop captures, then your position becomes bad, because you connect the rooks, you develop the pieces. That also comes with an attack towards the bishop, so that's a bit better move in this position. And the game goes on with both ways having roughly equal chances. Queens are traded off the board. You have actually utilized and just gotten a pawn, which will be taken back somewhere along the line, because your passes will be weak. But for that, white has a central e pawn. Maybe we'll see where the game goes. But here after c caps on d4, just castles was played, and now just comes as knight to c3. We have b5, a4 now, and now just going for even b4, attacking the knight. Knight goes to d5 to the center of the board, and that's a really strong knight. Do you really want to give up the bishop pair early on? But do you have any other choice? I don't see any other choice. That's the problem. A bishop to b7 was played, and now just comes as knight caps on e7, queen captures. So Hans has to now unfortunately get rid of the bishop pair, although he has a strong bishop on this diagonal. But what will prove to be more important, the two central passes or the bishop that is lone against the white pieces? So cutting the bishop off, here d5, and now these are two connected passes. So here it's going to be difficult to try and do anything here, because those are central pawns, and central pawns are always a nuisance. No matter which era, no matter which place, central pawns are always going to be annoying. Here rook f to e8, and now just comes bishop to g5, developing the bishop with tempo towards the queen to d6, and here just going for queen to d2, a5 now, and now just going for bishop to f4, again attacking the queen. And in this position, queen to g6 made much more sense. You want to activate the queen. The bishop is already on this diagonal somewhere along the line. You can make it alive, and after knight to h4, attacking the queen, you just play queen to f6, attacking the piece, and after this knight to f5, you just play c4, and push those pawns, because you need to create counterplay somehow. Yes, those central pawns look dangerous, but you cannot just sit there and just keep on being scared about those central pawns and not do anything. You have to just go out there and create chances for yourself. Yes, white has a better position, but it's not like you can just resign here, right? Hey, just bishop caps on c7. I mean, you have to sack it. There is no other way. And now after knight to c5, you just go for rook a to d1. Knight caps on e4, finally grabbing that pawn. That comes with an attack towards the queen. And once the queen moves to f4, now your piece and your piece is attacked, and in this position here, knight to c5, and after this rook caps on e8, rook captures. The game goes on, but this pass pawn is a bit too strong, and White does have the advantage, but Hans would have maybe made out alive if he's able to find out all of these moves, because you can create a pass pawn of your own and you would have some compensation. But in this position here, after bishop to f4, queen to b6 was played, and this is a passive move. And the thing is that White's pieces are all active. All you have to do is get this rook into the game, and here that's exactly what Lodici does in this position. Rook a to d8, and now just comes queen to c2, and here just eyeing that pawn, but for the moment it's defended by the 9. And somewhere along the line, even f5 would have been very nice, but in this position, unfortunately, you cannot even go for that. The knight and the bishop are placed very decently. You can somewhere along the line push that e pawn, and that's exactly what you're hoping for. A bishop to a6, and now just comes as knight to d2, rook to c8, b3 now, just closing in the position, but just comes queen to f6, and now that's attacks the bishop. But is it a bit too late? Because hey, bishop to g3, now you have c6 trying to just destabilize the position, but hey, just d6, pushing the pawn all the way, and now you don't have any trades, and the bishop is very nicely guarding the pawn. And here we have rook c to d8, knight to f3 now, and now just going for queen to g6, just asking for this. But in this position, just knight to h4, attacking the queen, queen to e6, and now finally knight to f5. That piece is very strong in this position. Knight is covering a lot of squares. You cannot even go for a move like knight to e5 in this position because it's not going to be good enough. So hey, just c4 was played. But now in this position, I think b caps on c4 would have done the job, because here after knight to e5, you have rook c to d1, and after knight caps on c4, you have knight to d4, attacking the queen, attacking the pawn. After queen to d7, you play this knight to b3. Now you're jumping in next to knight to c5 and attacking the queen, attacking the bishop, and that's really powerful. On top of that, even this is coming. So if you try to go for h5, making some breathing room for the king, you play e5, and next the knight is jumping in, and it's a position you're not going to survive. But after c4, here knight to d4 immediately, and now just comes this queen to f6, attacking the knight, but just e5, attacking the queen. And in this position here, Hans goes for queen to g6. But queen to g6 is something that I really didn't like, because the fact is your pieces are very, very passive, and queen is the only active piece you have in this position. So why trade it? I mean, knight caps on e5 maybe would have been a better option in this position, and after you go for something like, let's just say, queen to e4, then the game goes on. But still, that move was really not the way you're supposed to go for in this position. And after queen caps, h caps, you can see that all your pieces are passive, all of them. And b caps on c4 was played because that is the only move. And the thing is that now you're pawn down either hit c5, but now just comes knight to c6, so rook to a8, because the rook was attacked. Knight caps on a5, and we have this bishop to c8 attacking the knight. Knight needs to move. Hit knight to b3 was played, but just rook caps on a4. So you managed to grab a pawn, but that is under attack. Your knight cannot move. These two pass pawns are a bit too strong. This position you're not surviving. Here f4, but now just comes a rook to a3, trying to push this pawn, push this knight away so you can push the pawn. But here just rook to b1, not even bothered doing that. Here bishop to a6, and now just comes bishop to f2. Here in this position, bishop caps on c4. Maybe you can survive after that. Knight captures, bishop captures, and try to go for bishop to e6. But the thing is that bishop captures here, and these pass pawns are a bit too strong. You're playing against 5 against 2. Yes, you have 2 rooks and a bishop, but I don't think so you can survive here. Rook to a2, the game would most likely end in you losing. So here after bishop to f2, just rook to c8 was played, not going for that endgame. And here we have knight caps on c5, knight captures, bishop captures, and here in this position just going for bishop caps on c4. You cannot go for this. I mean, obviously you would have seen that this, and yeah, you're just gone. So here after bishop caps on c4, bishop caps on b4, and now just going for rook to d3, but here just rook bd1, rook captures, bishop to e6 was played, trying to stop the pass pawn from pushing forward, but you cannot survive here for long. Bishop to a5, and now bishop to d7, but here rook to b1, king to f8, and in this position rook to b7 maybe would have been a very nice move. You just stop and cover this entire file. But here in this position, bishop to c7 was played, and this is not at all a good move. And now Hans can survive in this position, but he needs to find the best move in this position, which is making some breathing room for your king with f6, and then you can survive. But here Hans goes for king to e8, so it gives some advantage back to Lodici, but he's gonna have to find the best move in this position. He goes for the best move. He plays rook to, well, c1 was the best move. He goes for rook to a1, and now just comes this bishop to e6. But bishop to e6 was not at all a good move. The move that you were supposed to play in this position, I'm going to ask you to pause the video, try and find out the only move in this position which saves the game, or at least gives you hope to be able to save the game. Have at it. So congratulations to everyone who's able to find this move. The move is very simple. The thing is that you want your king to be here instead of your bishop. Your bishop needs to be active. Your bishop, I told you, was not active on e6. The only place is just c6. And after this rook to c1, you go for king to d7, rook to c5, here rook to a8, and after this bishop to e5, blocking any path so you can harass the king. Here rook to b8, and now just comes rook to c2, controlling the second rank, but here just rook to 8, bishop to b2, and f6. So to try and preserve the rook from not entering your position, your pieces have gone a bit passive, and this is where you use your chance to be able to try and maybe draw this position. But here after rook to a1, bishop to e6 was played, and this is very much different because now the bishop is not occupying this. Even if your rook gets active somehow, it still won't be enough. Here king to f2, king to d7, h3, and just bishop to d5 in this position. And after g4 we have rook to a8, finally asking for a trade. Well, if you do go for a trade, the thing is that the position won't be a draw, won't be winning for white. So here in this position, just bishop to a5 was played, king to e6 and f5 check, but g captures. G captures, you cannot go for this because this promotion and you're just gone. So here king to d7, but here king to e3, rook to h8, and king to d4 was played. And now it's almost impossible to stop the pawns. Here bishop to b7 was played nonetheless, but here just comes bishop to e1, f6 now, but now just comes this bishop to g3, and it's very difficult. F caps on e5 now, king captures, and here rook to e8. And the move that you want to play in this position is king to d4, because the thing is that bishop will defend the pawn and the position would be easily winning. But the thing is that here king to f4 was played, and now you just lose the pawn, and which is very difficult for me to understand while Lodici went for this. But here just king to g5, now just comes this king to c6 because the king was under check, rook to c1 check, king to b6, and just h4, and now bishop to c8, bishop to c7 check, and now in this position just king to b7, and here bishop to d6, now preparing to just march the king forward, capture that pawn, and win the game. Here king to b6, bishop to c5 check, king to b7, bishop to d4, and now just going for rook to e4. And now the position with both of these players making horrendous mistakes, because the thing is that these players are very much down on the clock and these mistakes are bound to happen. A rook captures on c8 was played, now just comes king captures, and bishop caps on g7. So he actually managed to create two passes, but will he be able to push them? But you have to be really careful because those two passes are almost on the verge of queening. Here king to d7 h5, king to e7 h6, and king to f7 was played, and now just comes bishop to f6 and king to g8, and now just comes king to g6, rook to g4 check, and here bishop to g5, but just rook to g1. But rook to g1 just completely blunders the game. There was only two moves in this position which would have saved the game for you, was just rook to g3 or even rook to g2. Because the thing is that if you go for f6 now, the trouble for you is I have this rook to f3, and if you cannot go here, so you just give a check, you move forward, and if you try this move now, just comes rook caps on f6, and after king captures, here king captures, and this game unfortunately will be a draw. So rook to g3 and rook to g2 were the only moves, but unfortunately here rook to g1 was played. So you must be thinking, what is the difference between these two moves? Seems the same to me. It's not, because here after f6, now again rook to f1, rook to f3, you must be thinking are the same things. What is the difference? Here now comes bishop to e3, and bishop to e3 is a move that can just completely would have been avoided if you were there on the f3 square, or hell, if you were there on the f2 square, it would have been avoided as well. But the trouble is now you are not, and now here king to first here just a rook to f3 was played attacking that, but here comes h7 check, and now king to h8. But now the trouble is king to f7, and if you try to capture this now, this check would be just game over. You're just getting checkmate, and now you won't have anything. So here rook to g3 check was played, but after bishop to g5, here Hans Niemann resigned the game, and Lorenzo Lodici won this game in a 77 move grind, facing off an opponent almost 200 rated points ahead than him, and he was able to win this game with spectacular precision, and really a great game played by Lorenzo, and he won right on time. And well, this is a knockout tournament. He created an upset in the FIDE World Cup, and with that Hans Niemann has no chance to be able to go to the candidates now, and he lost his chance, and Lorenzo just kept him out. Really a spectacular play by Lorenzo. Congratulations and a huge kudos to him to be able to play this and win this game against the world's best. He kept his nerves till the very end, and really a huge kudos to him. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll be coming back with some of these amazing games, so stay tuned to the channel, stay updated, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon. Thank you very much for watching.